Hello and welcome to Starbucks, Carvana, and Building a Winning BDC to Showroom Experience. This automotive news power training webinar is brought to you by Max Digital. We're delighted you're with us today for this presentation. I'm Mary Beth Vanderscaff, Managing Editor at Automotive News. Before I introduce our speakers today, a few navigation tips. First, we encourage you to ask questions at any time. Just type them into the Q&A box on the left side of the webinar window and then hit submit. I'll steer your questions to our speakers toward the end of the session. Also, to enlarge the slides, just grab the frame with your mouse and pull it larger. And to download the slides, click on the folder icon at the bottom of your console. Joining us today, substituting for the travel-challenged Mike Cavanaugh, is Tim Scoutelas. Tim is Director of Strategic Accounts for Max Digital. He has 24 years of auto industry experience. Before joining Max Digital, Tim was a used car director and e-commerce manager for Penske Automotive Group. Tim was also a car purchasing manager at CarMax, where he appraised over 16,000 cars and was part of the CarMax.com startup team. Our other speaker today is Kim Evenson, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Max Digital. Before joining the team, Kim served as CMO for Legacy.com and Retrofit. Now, I'll turn it over to Tim to get us started.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Scoutelas, and that was a wonderful introduction. Really excited, Kim and I, to discuss with you the research that we found in the building of some of our newer products. Around what we've learned from Starbucks and Carvana and how to build a winning BDC to your showroom experience. The agenda today is quite simple. We'll be talking about how Carvana is as a BDC, the lessons we learned from Starbucks, and then we'll answer any questions from you. This is a slide of Mike Cavanaugh, and I appreciate your guys' flexibility in allowing me to step in. I assure you, I am way better looking than this guy. Those of you who know Mike, I'm just kidding. So sorry, but he had to be on the road today. And then Kim Evenson, our Vice President of Marketing, she will be joining. She's on the line with us now, but she'll be joining us at the end to talk to you guys about things we learned from Starbucks. So what are we going to talk about today? So we were putting this presentation together, and some of the feedback we got from some of our dealers as we ran through this content is, there's a lot of talk about Carvana, and isn't there anything else going on? And I think, yes, there's a lot of really good things going on in the auto industry, and we're going to share those with you today. But when you think about the things that are happening around Carvana, I mean, what I'd like for you to think about as we go through the presentation today is that, think of Carvana as a giant BDC, right? They don't have the brick and mortar that most traditional dealerships do. And when you look for success in e-commerce, right, people look to people like Amazon. Well, I think it's worth taking a look at Carvana when it comes time to building a successful BDC. So we're going to talk about 5 things that dealers can learn from Carvana. So step 1 and lesson 1 would be, guarantee to reassure. Right? So what I mean is, start at the end. As a dealer, you've invested so much in getting the lead, right, to the end, to the purchasing point. But let's take a look at, how to finish better with our customers. Those of you who follow me online, you'll know I think 2020 is about finishing better. Changes at the top of the funnel at a dealership, increase traffic, and that's good. But if we could do a better job finishing, I think we could make a significant difference in our closing rate. Adding confidence to the final step, let's just say like a guarantee, that could be significant. Now, I say that, and I'm sure people are on the line thinking, "Wow, I could never offer a 7-day money-back guarantee like CarMax or Carvana. And I'm not challenging dealers today to do that, but what I am challenging some of the customers that I work with is, maybe take a look at something that's within your scope. So our friends at the Luther Automotive Group, their spin is a 5-day, 500-mile return/exchange policy. Right? So how many times have you had a customer come back to your store not happy with the car that they bought? And yes, you're going to do your darndest to put your foot down, but at the end of the day, it's about keeping the car deal together. And so you're already, in many cases, a lot of dealers are already doing this. I think advertising this could really reassure, and bring comfort to the purchasing process and really improve, your closing rates. Lesson 2, we learned, is use tech to streamline the path. So what do we mean? What we see within the Carvana system today, like most online retailers and any good customer service system, it gives you full visibility into the order. Look at common exit points in your process, in your BDC, right? And I would challenge you to build bridges to a better customer experience, sort of like this webinar. You and I are sharing a page. I imagine an experience like that with your customer where you can, complete work together would greatly improve, the path to the purchase, as we like to say in the auto industry. Give your team that edge. Look at common exit points and make sure that you've built bridges. Okay, answering a call on the BDC and sending a link to a customer for what you've been doing once you've gotten done with them could be super duper impactful and really affect closing rates. Now, use those same techniques in person. That came out of over 1,500 interviews with customers that we did, and it seems pretty basic and silly, but if we are not excited about owning a car, we're not going to purchase it. What are you doing to enable your customers to check off these boxes? Right? How have you adapted, those into a process your team follows? Every time in the same way that the customer is following a flexible purchase flow within the online world. Right? What do people want to know? What are they doing to make that, easy for their customers? Now, Carvana reps can see everything in stock, anywhere from across the system. As a dealer, do you have multiple rooftops or do you have access to inventory? Why wouldn't you want to give that same advantage to your team? We've been trained over the years as dealers to, withhold information from the customers, while they're online as a way to kind of drive them to the store. The world is changed. If you're not giving your customer the information they're looking for, they may move on, somewhere else to get the answers. You're competing against some really good online experiences in the automotive space. I would challenge you. The choice is yours. How do you want to deal with this? Lesson 3 would be test and improve. Now, in retail today, you may not have a testing budget, but the rule is follow. In retail, the rule is follow what Amazon does. So I would challenge you. Follow as a dealership in the absence of Amazon. Let's follow what Carvana, has done, and that's what we took a look at. Now, high-level website design, it matters, absolutely. When your site is cluttered with pop-ups and the oh-so-unique $500 off coupon that comes up every time I enter a dealer website, and that really awesome chat box that pops up, it creates, customers are telling us it's creating a stressful experience for them. It's important today that you reassure the customer and give them the information that they need. Dealer websites were built to meet dealer needs. They're built to convert. Customers have told us in our research these sorts of interactions can be stressful and be confusing. We do a lot of consumer testing of dealer websites and our tools, and we better to better understand what customers want. So here's an example of a typical VDP page and what customers liked and didn't like. All the things that you'd expect, it's what you want. All the basic information clear and high on the page. Call for e-price. Not surprising. The feedback we get is this irritates customers. But and we hear all the time, putting your branding over the image, the also known as the famous overlay, it irritates the customers. We get that feedback a lot. Any place that you're getting between them and understanding the product, often will not be well received by the customer. Now, we regularly look at the experiences we build versus Carvana, and you should too. They're doing so many things right. Pictures are nice and large, and emotionally the page is easy on the eyes. In general, it's less is more. However, if you can organize information well, sometimes more can be more. This page on the right is optimized with the information customers are telling us they want to see. It's clear, visible, it's organized in a way that isn't stressful. But again, if you don't have the budget to test directly, assume that Carvana is doing it right, and try and do your best to mimic them. They are your Amazon. If you do have the budget, obviously there are options. Right? Notice the site to the right. You can outperform Carvana. This consumer-focused website tested really, really well with consumers. Lesson 4, make an offer. I think this is one of the forefronts for the success in Carvana today. As a former purchasing manager, it's near and dear to my heart. The customers can get an offer quite easily from Carvana, and it comes in two flavors. Right, so you've got the detailed estimate if you're willing to go through all of the steps, or a lighter, shorter process, which is basically more like an estimate. But in both cases, the customer gets an offer that they can count on. We offer this light estimate capability with our Max BDC products and a tighter on-site version with Max My Trade. And as we talk to dealers, we hear all the time, I don't want them to have any ability to get an estimate online, or I need them to come in, all the stories I hear from my customers. I get it. But you have to remember, in 2020, you are not in charge of the customer experience. The customer is. So if you limit what information they can get on your site, they are just going to get it somewhere else. Driving customers to someplace else, I think, puts you at risk from losing the customer. And that goes without saying. And remember, it's just as much about the experience today as the product. So learn from Carvana, give them what they want to help keep them in your experience. Here's an example of what an easy tool to give a customer just a simple estimate could look like. Lesson 5 is demonstrate dealership value. So as I drive around towns that I travel in, I see some of the most beautiful dealerships in the United States. And I look at a Carvana vending machine, and they could not be any further apart. So their advertising at Carvana specifically says, skip the dealership. Well, you know what I say? Let the haters be your motivators, right? And do what Carvana can't do, right? The in-store experience at a dealership today, franchise dealer, far surpasses anything that they could get at a Carvana dealership. You have the ability to offer multiple test drives. How many times has a customer come in and decided to flip from one car to the next? Good news is you guys have both, more than one make and model to choose from. At a brick and mortar dealership, you can get shoppers to come in and try, maybe a new car. I've seen some dealers today use props like a set of golf clubs on the showroom floor for the car, or maybe a test child seat that they could put in the back of that minivan they're considering. And even I've seen in some cases, I'm at a dealership today, and they have a large stuffed animal to play the part of a pet in the back of the SUV. So these are things that you won't be able to get at a Carvana that you could do at your dealership to make you different. And then obviously the service. I imagine some level of award-winning service department exists at your dealership. Make that the key differentiator. Be sure to use that to your advantage. Your convenient location, your pickup and drop-off for service, your loaner car fleet that allows them to test, future makes and models. And new owner workshops, demo days. These are all things that Carvana can't, and quite frankly, I'd be surprised will ever be able to do with their online experience. And this is a huge differentiator. And then obviously those of you that are on the line with a new car franchise, yes, you have the ability to offer something that Carvana and CarMax, CarMax to some degree, but not really, is offer the new car. Give them all the options. That's really, what it is all about. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to my good friend Kim to talk to you about our inspirations from Starbucks. Kim?
Thank you, Tim. That was awesome. So what we learned from Tim's section is essentially copy Carvana when you're thinking online, and then when it's offline, just dominate because you can beat them. They're ultimately beatable. What I'm going to talk about is Starbucks, and there's been a lot in the news lately about Starbucks omnichannel efforts. I'm not going to talk about that, so I'm going to apologize about that right away. You can ask a bunch in the Q&A, and I'm happy to talk about that further. What I really wanted to bring to the party is I worked for them super early in my career. I was 21 years old, and I had a staff of 20, and I got to meet Howard 3 times because the organization was small enough that it allowed that at the time, because I'm really old, and that was a long time ago. So let me go ahead and dive in. And I am an unabashed Howard Schultz fan. I think he's amazing. And I think as we look at lessons that we can learn from Starbucks, the number one lesson is building the culture that you want to see. I think everyone's probably heard this quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. This is honestly still to this day where I wind up stubbing my toe in a professional situation where, logic might have dictated one move, but culture dictates another. And in every situation, whether it's marketing, whether it's professionally, your stomach, your instinct, your heart is always going to dominate your head. And so Howard did just an amazing job of projecting himself and his values into the company. So the first is as you walked back into the back room and off of the showroom space in a Starbucks store when I worked there, you would see a sign, and the sign had 12 points on it. I can probably remember 4 of the 12, but the first 2 are here for you. One was be the finest purveyor of coffee. And what that meant to him and what that meant to the organization is anyone coming to work here better want to be the best, and their goal should be to deliver the best possible customer experience, and in this case, coffee experience, that you can. And I think that's really important for Automotive to take away. I hear a lot of status fighting, and even in terms of staffing, like, well, we don't have the ability to get the best talent, those sorts of things. I think setting that stake in the ground and saying we as a company are going to be the absolute best automotive retailer that we possibly can be, and anyone who joins needs to really believe that. The second point of those 12 was respect and dignity for all partners, and I recently wrote a piece on how retail really needs to learn from hospitality, and I believe in that wholeheartedly. And if you don't have respect and dignity across the team, you're never going to get to the place of hospitality and being able to welcome people in if they don't find the environment that they're working in to be that welcoming kind of environment where they can really grow. That was something that was backed up with HR policies, and so respect and dignity for all partners meant that at Starbucks you were offered health care even if you were part-time. Much later on, they did a lot more around education. Early on in the early days, we all had stock options, even if you were a part-time employee again. So there was a lot that he did both from an HR standpoint as well as from a communication standpoint that just made you understand where you fit in that culture. And it was something that you really wanted to be a part of. I'll talk about the strategic use of voicemail twice in this presentation. I know that voicemail isn't even a thing anymore, but he did just amazingly in leaving voicemails for the entire company when there was any important news and for the entire company before we headed into the holiday season. And I can't attest to whether or not he had been drinking, but what I can say is every year as we headed into the holidays, we got a voicemail from Howard as well as the CFO and the COO. They sang us various carols, and they thanked us very sincerely that as we were heading into the holiday season, that we were taking time away from our own families to spend time with our Starbucks family. And that's something that, doesn't cost anything. It's an amazing kind of leadership that really makes you want to be a part of that retail location and be the kind of place that is really welcoming and sets the tone. It's the place where people want to be. And as Kim touched on in Carvana's online experience, they do a lot to actually lower your emotional stress level. They do a lot in terms of colors, in terms of white space. What Howard did was he did a lot in terms of emotional space to really help people feel welcome. And so, you are in the hospitality business if you're in retail, and those little touches really matter. Something that is common to Starbucks and Automotive, particularly with the BDC, is that you've got a lot of turnover, particularly in the sales department. The BDC isn't a whole lot better. And so training is incredibly important when you have that kind of turnover. This was from a recent study that we did, our 4th annual dealer research survey. And what we found was the very top reason that millennials thought that people were leaving was because they had inadequate training. And when you've got an environment where there's a lot of turnover, again, it's really difficult to provide that welcoming environment and deliver the best experience. And a lot of people think of Howard Schultz and of Starbucks as being incredible in customer experience, but they don't understand that wasn't even his focus, that was the outcome. And he wholeheartedly believed that the best way to meet and exceed the expectations of the customer was to hire and train great people and invested heavily in us. And so just 3 quick ways to share that. And again, I'll try to always share both a free way and an expensive way, because I know HR policies are not easy to change, and you may not be in a position to invest in the same way that he did. But I just would encourage you to look at any way that you can, because those kinds of investments in your people will just pay long-term dividends. So 3 of the things that they did. The first was really interesting. You grew within the organization by the knowledge that you were able to share and the coaching that you were able to do. At most of the major meetings that you would have where there were manager gatherings or other, regional or quarterly meetings, there would be coffee tastings. And you would be expected to prove your product knowledge. And as a, brand new store manager, if I couldn't nail the difference between a South American coffee and an African one, it didn't mean good things for my career. It was seriously important that I was able to identify those products and differentiate those products. So I just would ask in your meetings, what are you doing to reward those people that have exceptional product knowledge? Are you giving them a chance to demonstrate that and really feel mastery and be very proud of what they've learned and how they can share that with others? From a more expensive point of view, he also provided dual paths for raising your salary. So during the time that I was there, I more than doubled my salary in under 3 years, and I did that by building the volume in my store and becoming a AA store, as well as rising in training levels. So when I first began working for them, I was qualified to train only hourly employees. And then I was qualified to train managers, and my store became a manager training store. And then I became a regional resource for training other managers. And with each of those changes, I increased my salary. And so it was really clear that not only did what I bring in terms of sales matter, but how I helped the entire organization to grow mattered more. They had very solid barista to manager training programs, and so again, it doesn't cost anything to look inside for talent first. That's just one of those things that you can do for your people that really allows them to see that they're valued. Another area that I've just loved, and it's set my career over the entire course of it, is what he did specifically with information to give your team an edge. And if you think about the things that are valued by people as they look at their job and why they change jobs or don't, a lot of that has to do with how open their manager is, how good their relationship with their manager is, and then if they have a friend at work, there's a bunch of other things too, so I don't want to overplay it. But the role of information is really important, and particularly when you're in retail and product knowledge is so core, that ability to transfer information is really a transformational leadership quality as well. And I love this quote. I think the currency of leadership is transparency. As we're thinking about this moment in time for us in terms of customer transparency, if we're not providing that to our own people, there's no hope that that's going to wind up being transferred to the customer at the end of the day. So a few points on that. Again, in terms of voicemail, when Howard had any major acquisition, any major news, a press release was going to hit publicly, we would get a voicemail from him that morning explaining his personal point of view on why we were making that move within the company. So I remember very clearly the morning that we acquired Second Cup. And I felt like I had a conversation with Howard. Howard, by the way, could not pick me out of a lineup, I'm sure, to this day. But I feel like we have a super close relationship, and he's like a best friend. So, walked out on the floor. One of my first customers said, hey, I heard about that Second Cup acquisition. And I could say super casually, oh, yeah, I heard from Howard, that the reason that we did that is we felt like the cultural fit was really strong, and we really needed to enhance our geographic footprint in the Northeast. I don't remember if that's the right region at this point, but I felt super smart, right? And the customer, reacted incredibly surprised because they had now just gotten information from the CEO of the company, via their store manager. But it was really just such a positive experience and didn't cost him a thing except for the foresight of really thinking through what his people might need to know and how to be a wonderful host within his store. Going along on that same track, we had very good direct communication with every store manager across a range of areas. And again, most closely valuable probably for automotive is the way that the product stories were communicated. So monthly, we would get a binder of training and merchandising briefs. So if we got a new product, let's say an Ethiopian harar, it would come with a product story that was super rich that could help people to really understand why they might want to buy that product. So that particular coffee cost probably twice as much as any other coffee that we had on the menu. But the story went like this. that is a wild berry harvest, and those beans fall from the tree onto tarps. They're dried in the sunshine, and that coffee cherry dries on the bean and then is shucked off. And so the amount of time that the cherry fruit spends around the coffee bean allows it to become a much more fruity flavor. And with that story, I'm telling you, no one ever asked me about price. And so it really has a very practical value, bringing it back to automotive. This is, again, the BDC product that Tim showed you earlier that we did a lot of research to build. When you have a story around something and you're able to provide your people with an exceptional level of detail, then they are much more likely to be able to fall in love with the product. And as he said in our Jobs to be Done research, a lot of the things that people are trying to do are quite basic. And so if you can give them the information and the story behind what they're looking for in a vehicle and satisfy those underlying needs, they are much more likely to fall in love with what you've put in, their personal garage. The other thing is just when you think about that transparency within this product, and again, it doesn't need to be done in this way, but this theme is really, really important. We created a unique shared link that the BDC can share while they're still on the phone with the customer, confirm the ask. That same link could be scanned later on by your salesperson. And so just keeping that continuity and transparency, this is what I talked to the BDC person about. This is all captured in my account. Anyone can have access to this, and anyone can pick up the process at any point. I'm a huge USAA fan. My husband has been activated a bunch of times. I constantly will then have some financial something that I need for my bank, right? So I call them up, I explain the situation, they put me on hold, they get another representative, they tell them the whole story. Then they come back to the phone and they say, Mrs. Evenson, Tony is going to help solve your problem and he's going to take you from here. I don't need to start over and say, yeah, I'm interested in that truck and start the entire conversation again. They've built an internal system that allows them to do all that communication for me and just make sure that they're delighting me at the end of the day. And that's really what it's all about. So how do you make that core experience machine better? And I think you just have to walk with me a little bit on this analogy, but I think that a lot of times when you have high-skilled people and an environment that is under change, there's a lot of stress there, right? So as I talk about this barista role, think about your highest-skilled salesperson, right? Okay. So in the past when I worked there, the barista role was super high skill. And I'll give you two examples of how it was high skill. Just in pulling the shot, you had these steps. So you needed to adjust the grind on the grinder. You filled the portafilter. That's what they call the little thingy that you insert into the group. Oh, you had to tamp it down. Then you had to pull the shots. If the shots were not pouring just correctly, you had to start over. So you knocked it out on the knock box, and then you start the entire thing over. Well, given that people had learned how to do this really difficult thing, when Starbucks changed their mind and made it automatic, to be honest, there were a lot of people that were upset. But what they were looking at the time was our best baristas are amazing, but there are some people that are not amazing at making that espresso. And so our experience, if you get someone who's less than perfect, is not going to be great. And they worked with the manufacturer and they developed a machine where they literally press the button. So less magic, but more consistency. Same thing in terms of the memory systems to remember a drink. So when I was training at Starbucks, people would use an upside-down cup to indicate decaf, right side up, caffeinated. They would twist it, the mermaid forward to mean whole milk, mermaid backward to mean skim. These baristas were amazing. They developed all this stuff, and now they use labels, right, which are great, help with omnichannel, help with mobile. There's a lot of reasons this is 1,000% better. It's taking that high-skill role and, frankly, high risk and making it low skill and high consistency. How can you do the same thing? Where are the places where you can simplify and improve the process? How can you capture what those top performers are doing and grow that usage across the team? Honestly, when he came into my store and took several things and trained them across the region, it was kind of annoying. Like, we had worked really hard to develop those particular systems, but there's also a stockholder, right? So it's important that you're looking at those places where you can identify what your best people are doing and make it a part of the machine. So think about any small piece of it. Where can you cut time on the BDC? You know, they're answering the phone. Where's a trouble point? They have to put the customer on hold. Tim was talking about building the bridges earlier. What if you sent the customer something before you put them on hold? What if you didn't have to put them on hold? What if you didn't have to ask the sales manager, make sure that that vehicle isn't sold, call this other person, and then still try to schedule the appointment? Where are the places where you can simplify? Take a tiny slice of it. So here's an example of looking at just the search process. It takes people in the BDC in general too long on your website to find the car that the customer is interested in. So we looked at, let's just break that down. What if you just typed in natural language exactly what the person said? I was looking at a red truck with a sports package and heated seats on your site. You type that in as they said that. You hit enter. Oh, were you looking at the Chevy Silverado or were you looking at the F-150? Great. Okay. Let me put both of those in your garage and let me send you this link and let me go on to the next stage. So, again, it doesn't need to be this product. It doesn't need to be anything in particular, but where are the places that you are having speed bumps? Where are the places where your process, you know your process is slowing down? And as Kim said, at the bottom of the funnel, you've spent so much money to get them to call you. So anything that you can do to get them to come in is really, really important. And some of those levers that you have are letting your customers understand exactly where they stand real time. You know, if you are nailing this product delivery experience consistently, you're taking it from super high skill, maybe your best salesperson can do an amazing job, but your BDC person really can't. Like, where are the places where you make that machine work for you? You use technology, you use training, and you use the culture that you've built to just nail that experience time after time. Because what happens when you do that is this, and this was ungodly early on a Sunday morning. My son is a volleyball player. This is at the Cormick Place, which is huge in Chicago, where they have like these large tournaments. And this line, as you can see, was out the door. There was Dunkin' Donuts, maybe 150 feet away, and then a food service location that actually served Starbucks drip coffee about 200 feet away. And so I used this time, because I'm a marketer, in line to survey these people and say, like, why are you waiting here? Honestly, it makes no sense. You could walk over to Dunkin' Donuts. And what I heard was some variation on, you know, it may not be the best cup of coffee that I've ever had, but it is consistent. And I think when you're looking at a group of people who are frankly miserable at, you know, somewhere south of 7 a.m. in the morning on a Sunday, you know, you don't really want to take a risk with a cup of coffee. Like, you just want it to be right. And so what are you doing within your experience to ensure that what you think you're delivering? And again, this is a place where Howard was just an incredible role model. He personally shopped 2 stores that I was working in. Over time, his mystery shopping obviously got less effective, both in terms of him just having less time as well as everyone knowing him, so secret shopping wasn't as possible. but they implemented a really strong mystery shopping program, and that was a large part of how managers got rewarded and how like managers of the quarter were chosen. And so you knew that, you were really there to provide the best experience and that you would be recognized for doing so. If you don't have a secret shopper program, let us do it for you. It's something that we find a lot of value in, to be honest, whether or not you work with us. And you can just request it at maxdigital.com contact. We'd be happy to do that for you. So that's really most of what we have for today. I want to allow a bunch of time for comments. As Tim went over, I really feel like the major lesson from Carvana is copy them where it makes sense and then just dominate where it doesn't. Like, location matters. It is so important to be able to see people face to face. I recently saw a fact that millennials love to shop local. I think that a lot of us have the misunderstanding, frankly, that like younger generations, are so in love with online. It's not necessarily the case. In this case, I think that Carvana has done so well because, frankly, we've let them down on the dealership side in terms of experience. And then in terms of Starbucks, it's really, these are the lessons around being a phenomenal host or hostess. What are the things that you would do if you weren't selling, but you were offering, you were inviting people in? Because do those now. Like that, those are the things that will really make the difference, and that's where online is winning. That's how they're winning. So with that, I would just say to wrap it all up, just make it easy for your team to consistently be awesome. Like that's what they want to do, and that's what you want them to do. And we'll stop and take a chance to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Kim and Tim, for that great information. And sure, now we'll turn it over to the audience for questions. How do you trade off time opportunity lost versus secret shopping learning?
Tim, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to do that?
I'll let you take that. I'll let you take that one, Kim.
Sure. I think sometimes people feel like I don't want to use up any of my resources in having a secret shopping instance when I could be serving a real customer. And I would just say that those training opportunities are priceless. Whatever you think that you're trading off, you're going to more than gain in getting the learning from that.
And I'll add something to that, Kim. I know my work with the dealers in my book of business, if a decision maker came to me and said, hey, would you do me a favor and mystery shop me? I need to see how my guys are doing. That's another great way to leverage your partners in the industry if you feel like it really would be a time crunch for you. But another great way to, it's the information we learn from when we do it with our dealers is so valuable, both for presentations like this and to share back with our customers.
Next question. Our BDC is using our website. How do you justify internally having a dedicated application?
You want to go ahead? We can tag you. I'll let you go first.
Go first. I'll add.
Okay, so I had this question asked of me just yesterday, and I think it's a legitimate question. You spend a ton of money as a dealer on your website, and quite frankly, there are a lot of good vendors out there, a lot of good websites. But I always come back to the idea that a website was built to convert. It's a good website will give you just enough to get the customer to call, because that's what dealers want. And until I see a lot of dealers change that behavior, maybe Carvana, I just think that that's all you're going to get. I'll run a BDC person through a couple of questions and ask them to answer them quickly, and they quite frankly, they struggle, or you have to enter your name. How many times do you get to your website and you have to enter your name to get to the next step? So a tool that sits by itself and works on its own, that's built to be a sales enablement tool, can be quite efficient. It's tested with consumer feedback. I think it adds a lot of the stuff that Kim was talking about to your dealership presentation. Kim?
Yeah, I would second that so wholeheartedly. I had the pleasure of doing the interview. We started this new series of kind of anonymous interviews so that we could get real feedback from folks that work in BDCs. And I did our first one with a representative, and he was talking about having to juggle 4 websites because that's how many his BDC served, and trying to find the car across those 4 websites and then potential backups across those 4 websites. And so it's just an area where I think so many organizations are, penny wise and pound foolish, because, again, you have paid so much money to get this person to call you. And there's not enough understanding of the web sensibility, and I think it's easy for me, having grown up in online marketing, but when you go to a website and it doesn't load in under 3 seconds, you go away. And when you call someone and they don't give you an answer in under 3 seconds, you hang up. And so, these are places where making that search super easy, I've got 4 other dealerships I can call. I am now interviewing you, and it's your chance to lose me. Why wouldn't you make a small investment to give your BDC people the best tool that you can?
What dealerships are models for the best Carvana-like experience?
Now, I got to do this one. So when I first entered Automotive about a year ago, and I started by doing some consumer research because it's my favorite thing to do. I'm weird that way. And what we found was there was one dealer website, and it's dgdg.com, that popped to the top very consistently when we were comparing dealer websites. I did not test them against Carvana at the time, so a little disclaimer there. I don't know for sure how they would have done, but across the dealer websites that we tested, they were very far at the top. And we did test them against CarMax, and they did better. And a bunch of the things that they did were really capitalizing on some of the emotional things. So where Carvana within the experience uses a lot of white and blue that are very calming, relaxing colors, at DGDG there's a lot of yellow. It's very sunshine and happy and happiness, which is actually also very nice for this experience.
Yeah, so the group that comes to mind when I get asked this question are the guys that I talked about in my presentation up at the Luther Automotive Group in Minneapolis. They're unique in the fact that they're in the Minneapolis market. They have 22 of their 27 stores are within a 16-mile radius, and you could check this out yourself. They recently launched a site, LutherBuysCars.com, and they are aggressively going out and trying to buy consumers' cars direct from them. So the website will walk you through how a white labeled version of an appraisal tool. It will be followed up by a call from a buyer, and if necessary, they took an old Kia Soul. They went down to the sign shop and had it wrapped with LutherBuysCars.com on it, and they'll drive out to the customer's house, look at the car, give the customer a check right on the spot. And those are the sorts of things that obviously Carvana will buy the car from you, but it's the next step because they're kind of in market and they're really building a name for themselves. So I would have challenged dealerships today to continue to look at ways to source inventory, because if you think about it, that Carvana is taking the page right from the CarMax playbook and sourcing cars from customers. It's the most efficient way to keep your inventory costs down. Good question.
How do you help your staff work well across the BDC and sales functions?
So
I can
go ahead, Kim.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I just have to answer. I can see Jason asked, who's your make and model experience website? DGDG.com. That was Del Grande Dealer Group. And then Tim, can you repeat the Luther site?
So the Luther site is lutherbuyscars.com.
And then the question that you had asked in terms of helping the staff work well across the BDCs and sales functions, I think honestly there's two things. One is, from an HR culture standpoint, it needs to be clear that they're on the same team. I think that, Kim and I both work for Steve, who goes by Fitz, and he is a retired Navy SEAL, and there is absolutely no tolerance for any sort of backbiting. Everything is about the team and the mission and getting it done. And I have literally never been in a more supportive environment. And so I think it's setting that cultural tone, and that the fact that dueling departments frankly just won't be tolerated, that you're all on one team. So that's a piece of it. I think the second piece of it is the technology piece of it. And, whether it's the software, which I don't know what it is that USAA uses, where they just have a really great CRM experience that anyone can pick up that account, or whether it's this Max BDC tool that we've developed, making it easy for people to immediately be able to pick up the experience and continue it forward makes all the difference in the world. When people are empowered with that information, if a customer comes in at a time when they were not scheduled, but can open up their phone, show a code to anyone in the store who can scan it and see exactly what they were expecting in terms of the cars that they wanted to look at, the trade-in that they were expecting to get in terms of an estimate, the monthly payments that they're expecting to get, you can help them get to that deal so much more effectively. And conversely, if you're holding back information from your people, if you're saying, you know what, I'm not going to give them any trade-in information, unless they come in store, you're setting up an adversarial environment, instead of really welcoming people in and being an ideal host or hostess. How would you want your mother to be treated, when she came in to buy a car? I think it's those basics.
And I'll just add this, Kim. I really think every dealer I hope would look for to build an internet dealership. I mean, that's really the way the direction that we're going in 2020. But it's finding that person who can effectively communicate with a customer over the phone